The United States Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, is on fire right now. Iranian drones hit it this morning. Black smoke is rising over the diplomatic quarter. The building is closed. Americans inside Saudi Arabia have been told to stay away from their own embassy. And Donald Trump confirmed yesterday that this war is going to last at least 5 weeks, with the full capability to go far longer. The last time America entered a war of this scale in this region, it lasted 8 years, cost $2 trillion, and killed nearly 4,500 American soldiers. That was Iraq. And what is happening right now is already bigger than the opening days of that war. Welcome to Global Conflicts. This is day 4 of Operation Epic Fury. And today, for the first time since this war started on February 28th, the question is no longer whether the United States can destroy Iran's military capabilities. The question is what comes after. What does 5 weeks of sustained bombing across 153 Iranian cities produce? What kind of Iran emerges on the other side? And what does America look like when it is done, with 6 soldiers already dead, gas approaching $5 a gallon, the Dow down over 1,000 points this morning, and 1 million civilians stranded across the Middle East with no flights home? I am going to answer all of those questions today. But first, let me give you the 3 headlines from this morning that tell you everything you need to know about where this war stands right now. Headline 1, Iran bombed the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. Headline 2, Trump says this war lasts 5 weeks minimum and he has the capability to fight it forever. Headline 3, Secretary of State Rubio said on Capitol Hill that the hardest U.S. hits on Iran have not happened yet. Let that sink in before we go any further. The hardest hits have not happened yet. After 4 days of over 1,000 strikes across Iran, after the killing of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, after 9 Iranian naval vessels sunk, after 787 confirmed Iranian deaths, after the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh was set on fire this morning, Rubio says the worst is still coming. Let us start with the embassy attack because this is the one that changes the strategic map of this entire conflict. At approximately 3 a.m. local time in Riyadh this morning, 2 Iranian drones struck the United States Embassy in Saudi Arabia's capital. The Saudi Defense Ministry confirmed the attack, describing a limited fire and minor material damage to the compound. Black smoke was seen rising over Riyadh's diplomatic quarter. The U.S. Embassy issued an immediate shelter-in-place notice for all American citizens in Riyadh, Jeddah, and Dhahran, and explicitly told them to stay away from the embassy building until further notice. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry condemned what it called a flagrant Iranian attack on their sovereign soil. Trump told reporters that details of the American response to the embassy attack would become clear very soon. Now think about what it means geopolitically that Iran just struck the American embassy in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not a party to this war. Saudi Arabia did not support the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran. Saudi Arabia has its own complicated relationship with Tehran and has been trying to maintain some degree of neutrality. And Iran hit an American diplomatic facility on Saudi soil anyway. This tells you something critical about Iran's strategic calculus right now. Iran is not trying to contain this war. Iran is trying to expand it. By hitting the U.S. Embassy in a neutral country, Iran is sending a message to every government in the region that hosting American assets, American personnel, or American goodwill makes you a target. That is a message designed to fracture the informal coalition of Gulf states that have been quietly supporting U.S. operations by allowing overflight rights, logistics access, and intelligence sharing. This morning, the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait was shut indefinitely after being targeted on Monday. The U.S. Embassy in Jordan was fully evacuated on Tuesday. The State Department ordered non-emergency diplomatic personnel and their families out of Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Iraq, Jordan, and the UAE. The United States is effectively dismantling its diplomatic presence across the Middle East in real time, not because it wants to, but because the embassies themselves have become targets. Now let me put Trump's 5-week statement in the historical context that it deserves, because this is the comparison that every analyst in Washington is now making and that most news channels are dancing around. The last time America launched a major military campaign in this region was the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The stated objectives then were similarly bold: destroy weapons of mass destruction, remove a dangerous regime, establish stability. The initial air campaign lasted 3 weeks. The war itself lasted 8 years and 9 months. It cost American taxpayers $2 trillion. It killed 4,187 American service members. It wounded over 32,000 more. And when it ended, Iraq was not the stable democracy that was promised. It was a fractured state with significant Iranian influence throughout its political and security institutions. Iran actually came out of the Iraq war stronger than it went in. Trump says this Iran operation will last 4 to 5 weeks. He says the objectives are to destroy Iran's nuclear program, its navy, and its long-range missile stockpile. Those are three separate military campaigns compressed into one. Destroying a nuclear program means finding and penetrating deeply buried underground facilities, some of which have survived multiple previous strikes. The Fordo facility, built under a mountain, took minimal damage in the opening strikes, according to early satellite analysis. Destroying a navy means sustained maritime operations across the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman, while Iranian forces are actively shooting back. Destroying a long-range missile stockpile means finding mobile launchers that have been dispersed and hidden across a country the size of Alaska. 4 to 5 weeks is an extraordinarily optimistic timeline for three simultaneous objectives of that complexity, and Trump himself said the capability exists to go far longer. Here is the Iraq comparison that nobody in the mainstream media wants to say directly. When the Bush administration launched the Iraq War in 2003, the initial estimate for the duration of major combat operations was also weeks. Deputy Defense Secretary Paul Wolfowitz famously said the war would pay for itself with Iraqi oil revenues. The mission accomplished banner went up on the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln after 43 days of major combat, and then the real war began, and it lasted 8 more years. The same USS Abraham Lincoln is now operating in the Persian Gulf as part of Operation Epic Fury. History does not repeat exactly, but sometimes it echoes loudly. Trump's Iran campaign has objectives that are more defined than Iraq's were. He is not trying to occupy Iran. He is not putting ground troops in, at least not yet, though he has refused to rule it out. The strategic goal is degradation, not regime change, according to Defense Secretary Hegseth, though Trump himself has repeatedly hinted at wanting regime change. That internal contradiction between Hegseth saying this is not about regime change and Trump calling the Iranian government crazy people who need to be removed is the same contradiction that plagued the Iraq War from day one, and it creates the same strategic ambiguity that makes clean exits almost impossible. Now let me talk about the 1 million stranded civilians, because this is the human story of this war that is not getting enough attention. Aviation data firm Cirium reported 1,100 flights canceled on Tuesday alone in and out of the Middle East. The total flight disruption since February 28 is the largest global aviation crisis since COVID-19 shut down air travel in 2020. And Trump just told the world it lasts 5 more weeks minimum. More than 58,000 Indonesian citizens are stranded in Saudi Arabia, having traveled to Mecca and Medina for Ramadan. They are elderly pilgrims, families, first-time visitors to the holy sites who made this journey as a lifetime religious obligation. They cannot get home because Saudi airspace is restricted and the Gulf hub airports they would normally connect through are closed or operating at minimal capacity. Approximately 30,000 German tourists are scattered across the region, some on cruise ships that cannot dock because the ports are under missile alert, others in hotels receiving shelter-in-place instructions. Italy evacuated roughly 500 of its stranded citizens on Tuesday via state-organized charter flights from Muscat and Abu Dhabi. 500 people out of hundreds of thousands still waiting. Dubai International Airport, the world's busiest passenger hub with 95 million travelers per year, has partially resumed limited operations after being shut entirely in the first days. But limited operations at a hub that normally moves 250,000 passengers daily still means thousands of cancellations, and travelers who were using Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha as connecting hubs for intercontinental journeys are stranded far beyond the Middle East. Passengers in Bali, Indonesia could not reach Europe because their Dubai connection was canceled. Travelers in Lagos could not reach East Asia because the Doha route was shut. Students flying London to Mumbai on connecting flights through Dubai found themselves stranded in the UAE with no onward options. This war closed the 3 airports that sit at the center of the intercontinental aviation network, and its effects are being felt on every continent. For Americans specifically, the State Department message this morning was the starkest emergency travel communication issued since the 2011 Arab Spring. Leave now. Depart immediately from Israel, Bahrain, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, the UAE, and Yemen. That is 14 countries, virtually the entire Middle East. And then the State Department added the sentence that no government wants to say to its own citizens, if you choose to avail yourself of this option to depart, the U.S. government cannot guarantee your safety. That sentence is not a legal disclaimer. It is an honest admission that American consular and protective capacity in the region has been overwhelmed. The embassies are closing. The military is fully absorbed in combat operations. The commercial aviation network that normally serves as the civilian evacuation route is fractured. Americans in Bahrain who moved there for work, who have children in school, who built lives there, woke up this morning to a closed embassy and a text message telling them to leave a country that Iran is actively striking on flights that may or may not be operating through a region that the State Department itself just declared too dangerous for American personnel. Let me now walk through what the Dow losing 1,000 points this morning means for ordinary Americans who have never been to the Middle East and have no intention of going. Financial markets are forward-looking instruments. When the Dow drops 1,000 points, it is not reacting to what happened yesterday. It is pricing in what traders believe is going to happen over the next 5 weeks, based on Trump's own statement. They are pricing in sustained oil supply disruption through the Strait of Hormuz. They are pricing in extended LNG supply reduction after Qatar shut down the Ras Laffan terminal, the world's largest LNG export facility. They are pricing in continued escalation from Iran targeting Gulf infrastructure. They are pricing in Rubio's warning that the hardest U.S. strikes have not happened yet, and the Iranian retaliation that those strikes will provoke. The S&P 500 down 1.6%. The Nasdaq down 1.8%. European banking stocks down 3.8%. European insurance stocks down 4.2%. Every pension fund, every 401k, every savings account tied to equity markets took a direct hit this morning because of a war that Trump's own administration says lasts at least 5 more weeks. The gas price impact is the most immediate and tangible for most American households. GasBuddy's chief petroleum analyst confirmed the national average jumped 12 cents in a single day on Monday, the largest single-day spike in 4 years. California stations are already posting $5 per gallon. U.S. crude oil rose to $77 per barrel. Brent crude hit nearly $84. Goldman Sachs modeled oil at $120 to $150 per barrel in a full extended war scenario. If Brent reaches $130, Oxford Economics calculates U.S. inflation climbs to 4.5%. That reverses 3 years of Federal Reserve progress on inflation in a matter of weeks. It forces the Fed to abandon any plans for interest rate cuts. It makes mortgages more expensive. It makes car loans more expensive. It raises the cost of every product that requires transportation, manufacturing, or packaging to reach a store shelf. A war in Iran becomes a tax on every American household, and it arrives at the gas pump first. Here is something that most coverage today is missing entirely. Amazon Web Services confirmed that 2 of its data centers in the UAE were directly struck by Iranian drones on Sunday, causing structural damage, disrupted power delivery, and water damage from fire suppression. A third facility in Bahrain was damaged by a nearby strike. AWS told its customers to consider migrating workloads to other cloud regions because it expects a prolonged recovery. AWS runs a significant portion of the global internet infrastructure, including banking systems, healthcare platforms, e-commerce networks, and government services. Iranian weapons physically struck those servers. This war is not contained to a geographic combat zone. It has already reached inside the digital infrastructure that powers daily modern life. Iraq's oil ministry reported that Iranian strikes near the Rumaila fields in southern Iraq have disrupted tanker access so severely that oil storage levels there are rising to critical capacity because the oil cannot be moved out. Hezbollah in Lebanon entered the conflict on Sunday, and Israel has responded with ground troops crossing into southern Lebanon for the first time since the 2024 ceasefire. Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG terminal is shut. Oil supertanker rates hit an all-time record high today. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed to commercial traffic, with Iran threatening to set fire to any vessel that attempts to pass. This is what America just entered. Not a targeted strike, not a quick in-and-out operation, a sustained, multi-front, regionally expanding military campaign that the president himself says lasts at minimum 5 weeks and potentially far longer. The last time America did something like this in this region, an entire generation of soldiers came home changed, $2 trillion disappeared from the national treasury, and the Middle East was less stable at the end than it was at the beginning. The U.S. Embassy in Riyadh is on fire this morning. The hardest hits have not happened yet, and 1 million people have no way home. Before I go, I want to ask you 3 questions, and I want real answers in the comments. Do you think Trump's 5-week timeline is realistic given how these wars tend to expand? Yes or no? That is option A. Or do you think this war ends faster than expected because Iran agrees to negotiate once the military pressure becomes unbearable? That is option B. Or do you believe this becomes a multi-year conflict like Iraq and Afghanistan that outlasts Trump's presidency and reshapes American foreign policy for a generation? That is option C. Drop your answer below and tell me why. Subscribe to Global Conflicts if you want daily coverage of this war as it develops. I will see you tomorrow on day 5.